So what we want to do is kind of talk a little about how BEAD funding is going to happen in these three states. We're looking at Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. What is the best practices that they can see? How are they developing their offices? And what's the interface between them and tribal nations? This is just an offering for these three states. Hopefully other states will be following this. We hear different things, so maybe somebody can do this better in one state or the other. Hopefully they can all collaborate and get on the same page like we've been doing today for the last couple of days. You know, it's been great. This morning was a good turnout where we all talked and about all the deals that was happening in any country. And I appreciate Calix for doing that. So let's go into this next forum. And then we'll head into lunch. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it to you guys to at least tell us who you are and what you're doing here and what you hope to achieve and accomplish. Okay, so I'll start off with you, Kimball.
Okay, hello. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kimball Sekaquaptewa. I'm the Chief Technology Director at the Santa Fe Indian School, and I'm the chair of the New Mexico Connect Council, which is helping our broadband director of New Mexico connect every New Mexican with robust internet. It's an ambitious goal, and I'm happy to be here and offer what I can to pitch into this effort. We have a lot of excellent tribal projects in New Mexico, and I think one thing that I can say is that we have a great relationship with our state. So if we can use that to help other states and other tribal nations build on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity we have for broadband funding, then that's what we're here to do today.
Hello, my name is Kelly Schlegel. I'm the broadband director for the Office of Broadband Access and Expansion at the state of New Mexico. Was appointed by the governor in mid-July. So I've been at this about 7 or 8 months and learning every day as I go, and just really excited to bring, as Kimball said, internet to all for all of New Mexico, including our 23 tribes and pueblos, and including our sovereign lands, and getting to every corner of New Mexico, which can be a challenge because of the ruralness of New Mexico, because of the population dispersion, because of the rights-of-way that someone mentioned. There's permits, rights-of-way, pole attachments. There's BIA lands that was mentioned earlier. There's national forest, state parks. So there's all kinds of nuances as you're building a fiber highway. So we're trying to break down some of those obstacles. We just passed 6 broadband bills at the state of New Mexico. That's going to take some baby steps to doing that, but we have more work to do. And it all comes with collaboration. I was talking to the lady at the front desk, and she said she was so happy, Godfrey, about the turnout and the connections that she was seeing that was happening. So I just appreciate Godfrey's leadership, NTTA's leadership, Kimball's leadership out of the Santa Fe Indian School, where we can get those collaborative partnerships. Right now, the state of New Mexico has won, thankfully, $652 million across 57 broadband projects. And quite a few of those are tribal, around 9 or 10. And I expect every 20 of the 23 tribes and pueblos to win tribal broadband connectivity program money. So that's the good news. The challenge is trying to bring all those projects together and collaborate and to get the interconnect points. Understand the backhaul, understand if the tribe or pueblo wants to have their own, be their own internet service provider, okay, or if they want to partner with local companies. So my job is to bring that collaboration and make sure that framework is happening across New Mexico. So every day my challenge is, okay, how do I make sure all 57 projects are coming together like a puzzle piece, and how is every community being involved? So the voices need to come together, and thank you for doing this so that we can make those connections to make it happen. Okay.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Dilge. I'm the director of the Utah Broadband Center, and I'm very happy to come down here and get out of snow. It snowed again today. We've got an inch on our front lawn. My husband sent a picture. So I'm loving the rain. It's great. I agree with Kelly and everything she said about partnering and working with the tribes. So we are tasked, every state is tasked to put together a 5-year plan and how this is going to happen. This plan is not dictated by us. We're just organizing it and submitting it. What we need is information from you, what you want in the plan, where the areas of need are. We're doing this, and I'm sure the other states are too. The state of Utah, we are going out and we have been having meetings in person with every county, with every tribe. We had a tribal consultation with all 8 tribes were invited. We have about 5 that were able to attend in person, and now we're going out individually and meeting with each of them. And your states can do the same. And I would encourage this communication. With this, again, we're not dictating. We are just wanting to know what your plans are, what you need. The funding for the BEAD will come to the states. It's unique. It's first ever that we're not going directly, or you're not going directly to the federal government to apply for the grant, but the funding is coming this much closer to the people who know what's happening in their states. And but we need to hear even more locally what your needs are in your tribal areas. So get in touch with your state leaders. And Sandip and I were talking about this earlier. Broadband USA, there's a list. This is NTIA. You can Google broadbandusa.com. And there's click on your state and you can find out who your state broadband leader is.
Great, Rebecca. I appreciate it. Sandip?
Thank you, Godfrey, for the opportunity. And thank you, everyone, for making this trip. I'm from Phoenix local, so welcome. As my colleagues mentioned from different states, our motive here to share what we are doing and find a way how we can collaborate. My name is Sandip Bhowmick. I'm State Broadband Director for Arizona. Very excited to share what we are doing in the state front. We recently completed a $100 million grant through CPF, Capital Funding Project. And not to mention the big elephant in the room, which is the BEAD funding coming. We are here to explore how we can collaborate together, because the BEAD planning is very crucial to express that how states and tribes are participating in the plan and sending it to NTIA. So happy to take any question after the panel. And happy to help you. I'll be here around after the panel, so feel free to reach out. And also, I would like to say that Governor Hobbs is really motivated, and it's one of our prime target, or basically to connect the tribes, and she's committed. So Governor's office is here too for her tribal liaison. So please feel free to reach out after the event if you have any question. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandip. I'm going to moderate this panel for a little bit, so we didn't put that on the program, but I have some questions that hopefully a lot of you can answer. But the biggest one is, how is each of your state handling tribal engagement? That's going to be one of the big things where tribes can participate in the new BEAD funding, and that's anticipated to start in June, hopefully, if nothing else happens. But that's one of the issues that tribes are probably wondering, what can I do? And then there's the other thing that was clarified for yesterday by Adam Geisler, was the fact that 25% match can be in-kind donations. How are the states going to treat that? And I know some states are going to be pretty tough on that, and some states are going to be pretty lenient. I just want to get your perspective of what New Mexico, Utah, and Arizona is going to do with that. So,
Okay.
Who wants to go first?
I can go first. Okay. So that was kind of a lot in the question, so I'll kind of try and get that all together. But as Rebecca said, the tribal and community engagement is really key going forward. Okay, as we submit this 5-year plan, Ours is due for the state of New Mexico, August 28th. And we want to get all the right feedback, all the right listening, all the right needs, asset inventory, kind of broadband desires and network designs that we can feed into that for August so that we can make sure your desirements are covered and that we're providing the right thing at the right place at the right time. Okay, so that's so important. What Rebecca mentioned was the summer broadband plan that's due to NTIA. In New Mexico in 2022, we had 150 community engagements, which included about 12 tribal engagements as well, also a big tribal convening. But now in 2023, we have to be more focused. That was good meet and greet, getting to learn, getting to trust each other. But now there's certain very key data that has to be gathered and fed into because the reports and the plans that you submit are data driven. So data analytics, your mapping that was mentioned earlier, your asset inventory, your needs, the mix of technology, what's surrounding the area, that all has to be fed in so that you have a comprehensive, detailed, and believable plan. So we can only do that with partnership, collaboration, and help. We do have, as Sandip mentioned, we do have a grant making in process called the Capital Projects Fund through ARPA. New Mexico is in the middle of that grant making. Tribes and pueblos are coming forward for the different waves. But the match that Godfrey mentioned, we're doing several things to address that. If you can show a need, maybe you're a small fledgling internet service provider on the tribe or pueblo, you can get a waiver for that match, okay? Also, in-kind donations. I have a whole white paper on what you can use for in-kind donations, and NTIA has one on their website that's quite useful. Things about things that you've purchased in the past, some towers, some fiber, whatever, you can show those as in-kind donation. Also, you can partner with surrounding communities who might be able to make a match. Plus, I've asked the governor to put in some money that will actually have a fund, and I'm hoping in this next go around that fund will be continuing, where we'll have some match money to help the smaller areas, help them out with that. So we're trying to do kind of a 5 or 6 pronged attack on that so that we can offer solutions to people and not just rigid requirements.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I really appreciate for Kelly. When she came into the office, one of the first things we did was to set up a contractor, and not a tribal liaison, but really somebody to help with the communications and to engage the tribes. Because unlike, how I was raised in my career, going to the federal agencies as the point of contact for funding, like the money's going through the state. And as tribes, we don't necessarily know the different entities and know the policy and procedures of the state. We don't know how they conduct tribal consultation always. We don't demand, we don't expect them, we don't hold them accountable to do that. So we have to engage with the state in a way that may be new to us. And right now, because it's in the plan writing part, this is the time to write the rules. Let's not wait till they finish their plans and then tell us what we can apply for. If we can get engaged right now in the creation of the plan, we'll write the rules that are going to be most favorable for our tribal infrastructure projects to get funded and implemented. So that's the game. That's what our focus should be right now as tribal nations.
Thank you. So we have, along with our outreach, we have been having some consultations. We've also been meeting one-on-one with the internet service providers. So if your tribe is wanting to be an internet service provider, we want to know. We need to know the areas of coverage and the capabilities, technologies, and things like this. If you are working with a provider, we want to meet with them. And we have met with almost 50 internet service providers in the state of Utah. And every state, if you haven't heard from your state leaders, reach out to them, as I mentioned. Another component of BEAD, and I think it's important that we're tasked with, or there might be another agency at the state, is the digital equity. And so this is additional funding, and so it's a matter of finding champions in your community who are helping to bridge that gap, as we call it, of the digital divide. Some of the states are doing summits. So we are partnering and co-hosting with NTIA, our federal partner of National Telecommunications Information Administration, who's, this is where the funding's coming from. We are having ours in June. We're actually calling it the Utah Broadband Confluence, like the rivers that come together. We're bringing the providers in, we're bringing communities, we're bringing tribes in to all meet together and to be able to look at the plan and confirm that this is what we want. So again, these consultations, if you haven't heard from your state leaders, reach out to them. And I have been hearing even today, some that have come up to me. I met with the Mountain Ute tribe a couple of weeks ago and appreciated that. And we've got now additional meetings that are coming up, working very closely with the Navajo Nation and the Paiute. And it's been a learning experience for me. I have been in this office, been doing broadband for almost 5 years for the state, but it was part-time until a year and a half ago, and working, actually it felt like more like full-time all through COVID, but the office was established finally about a year and a half ago. But working with the tribes, and now I've got a team of people, so it's not just me trying to cover the whole state, and the states also are able to gear up and use some of this funding to expand their offices to reach out.
So in the state of Arizona, we Arizona Broadband Office is reaching out to all the tribes. We have 22 federally recognized tribes here in the state. And we're holding listening sessions, tribal engagement process. But the most important thing, I think, is coming out from governor's office right now, which is tribal consultation. It's a leader-to-leader formal consultation. Our team is working on that. So that's the most crucial steps we are taking towards making sure that we're collaborating in upcoming BEAD and digital equity planning. Godfrey, you mentioned the matching. So the matching part can be tackled using multiple sources, like funding sources. If you have local CPF, Coronavirus State and Fiscal Recovery Fund directly assigned to tribes, you can actually use that funding for matching. That can be an in-kind donation, which can go towards the network building, fiber, electronics. And the most important part, if there is a community which is having hard time providing the matching, we can always work together and find a solution. There is a waiver process, basically. We can apply and build an application together. Definitely, one of the main requirements of this waiver process is we have to figure out what impact this broadband connection will bring into that community and justify that. And Assistant Secretary of Commerce will be reviewing that and approve it. That's why I personally feel that, as my colleagues mentioned, it's very important and crucial that us, the State Broadband Office and tribes, we are collaborating in the plan. So the plan has 3 significant parts here. One is 5-year action plan, which is mostly due in August, and then the initial plan, which is due in December this year, and the final plan, probably end of 2024 or beginning of 2025, sometime it's due. So if we are working together and basically including that this community or this particular community will not be able to provide the matching and including those information as part of the 5-year action plan and initial plan, NTIA will know what's coming. So they already have visibility on those plans. They are going to review those plans and approve it. So I personally think, and I'm sure my colleagues will agree with me on that, it's very important that we sit down with you, we listen to you. You know your community better than us. We are interested in hearing what's your thought on this process. How should we help you? Is there any other source of funding we can probably secure together? So it completely depends on you. It's your community, your decision. We are just here to help. We are the resource here. So happy to discuss more, but the plans are the most important part here, I personally feel.
Great. I've got another question. Obviously, when we first started this conference, we talked about sustainability for tribes, especially for funding from NTIA. A lot of it's for infrastructure. So how are tribes looking at different ways of maybe looking to the state to be able to develop a fund, a mechanism to be able to pull funding from, a state USF type of funding that some states have already established? Can tribes be able to participate into that and be able to pull some funding down to help alleviate, maybe not for a long time, maybe 4, 5, 6 years, but at some point in time, tribes are going to need help to get help with operational costs. We have all the CapEx that we need, but we have no operational costs to be able to draw from. Tribes are going to be burdened to do this. They can do it maybe for about a year, but after that, they're going to be hard pressed to figure out how to take care of this operations going forward. So do you guys have any plans for that and how you can mitigate that?
Yeah, we put in our first fiber networks in 2018 across two Pueblo consortia. And so we're already living in that next day. And so what we realized is workforce training was so vital. And I'm super happy that we have Isleta and Acoma and San Domingo here, some of our member tribes, because we realize that we have to invest in our people to manage our own operations. So during COVID, it was the tribes where we already brought the fiber backbones that were able for a few $100,000 as opposed to a few $1 million to provide their own residential internet access. And because we were locked down physically on our perimeters for the COVID, tribal members, people couldn't not just go in, people couldn't go out. So we were able to train our tribal members to install the CPEs in the homes. And then the people, if let's just say there was a dozen installers, well, a quarter of them are interested in that as a career. So now we're investing in workforce development and trainings, and they're the ones that are now in turn operating their ISPs. So it's the human side, which is just so huge in part of this equation after the grant funding runs out, that we need to be intentional and deliberate about. But also advocacy with what Godfrey was mentioning about the universal service funds. If we could have a broadband only ETC eligible, what was it, telecommunication carrier status with the FCC, then you can tap into Lifeline or ACP. But if we could just have broadband only and not have to do the voice regulatory components, then it's much simpler from an operational standpoint because of the regulatory components of voice, and then you need, other kind of consultants you need. It's much more expensive if you're in that arena. But if it was just broadband and we could type into Lifeline, then we could tap into those discounts. And those discounts, even though they're intended for your low-income customer, come to you as an operation. So it's actually like monthly cash flow. So there's some advocacy elements that we all need to be writing letters and start building up some momentum for both the federal FCC Universal Service Fund and our state Universal Service Funds, so that we can add to that sustainability bucket.
I'd like to kind of add on to Kimball, so if that's okay. Thank you, Kimball, for that. So, Godfrey, really sustainability is a really big question going forward and really needs focus, because we all are in the focus of building, but then we have to do the next step, which is the sustainability. So I just went going forward on April 5th to the Public School Capital Outlay Council at the state of New Mexico, asking for some funds for sustaining the networks for the schools. So what I would like to see in New Mexico, as we start to build out the state and as we start to get where we are, that we keep funding the Connect New Mexico Fund, that Kimball's been part of as part of the Connect New Mexico Council, and start doing yearly appropriations to that. So as we start getting built out, we can start moving those funds into the sustainability piece, the network operations center, the security operations center, the cybersecurity, and then just even the monthly running of it. So I really that's my vision for where this whole state funding goes. And I also heard in some of the federal meetings that it looks like they're talking about it at the federal level too. It looks like the FCC is looking at a fund for that. And so I'm excited that everybody's thinking about it and we can start to move towards that.
I don't really have much to add. That is a real challenge, and that was presented to me more than once by providers, carriers of last resort who participate in the Universal Service Fund, to say, these grants are one and done. And then what is going to pay for this ongoing maintenance? There are providers, at least in our state, that participate with the Universal Service Fund. They're regulated. Not all providers want to be regulated. And so there are certain requirements with this. I would talk to them, talk to these providers, communicate with them, see if this is something you want to go. Do you want to go with a provider who can use this Universal Service Fund, who can take care of the system ongoing? Or do you want to do your own? Is there a way that you can tap into this also, and that you can become a user of the Universal Service Fund? The advantage of using this ongoing maintenance is of course, the cost, and with partnering with the Affordable Connectivity Program and the Lifeline, it's possible to actually have on tribal lands for free. The monthly service, there's not a cost for those that are eligible. And then a provider who is able to get this Universal Service Fund, that is taking care of their expenses. But a tough one.
Sandip?
I think there are few things states can do which can reduce the OPEX cost. One of them is ACP adaptation. It's very important, which will give the companies or the tribal carriers some runway that they can run the business. Another thing my colleagues already mentioned, the Universal Service Fund from FCC. Also, let's take a harder look at the whole IIJA portfolio. Let me give you a quick example. The pole replacement under the Smart Grid Act in IIJA is the grid modernization is eligible. If we are doing a overlay fiber, which is pole attachment, instead of spending that money from the BEAD funding, we can probably spend that money from the IIJA Smart Grid Modernization funding. So if we can keep the initial investment low, probably that would give them a little bit more runway, give the tribes a little bit more runway when the OPEX portion comes. So in Arizona, we have an IIJA task force. We directly collaborate with our local co-ops, electric co-ops. So, and taking some other steps, which will be revealed in the plan. So there are a few ways we can probably keep it low, but that's still a question we need to address and query we need to figure out.
Great. Last question, guys. So we're getting into the hour for these guys' stomachs. So last question I have is, there's been a lot of buzz about overlap. People getting triple funding in certain areas. And, what's the best mechanism to use to be able to kind of decipher that, to be able to make sure that each area is not being double funded? We just want to make sure that any country gets all the broadband it needs, every home. So are you guys using mapping, or what are you going door to door or something like that? Give me a little clue of what you guys are doing.
Sure. Yes, mapping is very crucial. And I think there are funding in certain areas where we are not still sure if, let me give you an example again. I like using example, RDOF funding. If you have already RDOF funding or any other form of USDA grant, which is federal funding coming directly from FCC or USDA for a particular area, and we are talking about BEAD, it's a little bit different. Now, tribes are sovereign nation. They have full right what they want there. which company they want there, or if they want to be their own telecom provider. So states are here to help, but in background, we are trying to bring all the data together and probably have a conversation along with tribes, with any RDOF winner in that particular area or USDA grant winner, that how we can work together and make sure that we are not overlapping on each other, because federal funding should complement each other. It doesn't matter which bucket it's coming from, not overlap or overbuild on each other. And trust me, I strongly believe the money is coming through the BEAD funding. It's not sufficient all the way to build fiber to home or build a resilient connectivity all over the state or all over the US. So if we can play with those funding and basically which can complement each other, that would be a great form or great way to bridge the gaps.
Now, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, especially the federal people, but like in our state, Starlink was awarded a lot of the RDOF. And so right now they are ineligible. And so a lot of this area now is open and available for the BEAD. Some are projected to not complete their projects for years beyond when BEAD can do it. So those are things that we need to look at, and we might be able to discuss that or challenge this with the NTIA and the FCC of that we want this done now, and so we can use these funds. But as Sandip said, our resources are limited. So we only have so much. I know the state of Utah will not be getting enough to cover all of the areas that are not currently served without, number one, match, and number two, taking into consideration the federal programs that have already been funded. So we have Reconnect, we have RDOF, and so these are projects that are getting started now. We need to talk with these providers. We need to talk and find out what their plans are, what their timelines are. And of course, the maps. Yes, we're using maps. Every state is working on this, and they either have maps. I know New Mexico has fabulous maps. I'm confident in ours. And we are also encouraging everyone to go to the FCC map. So this is very important. And they're asking every individual in the nation to go to their map, put in your address, or however the tribes put in your addresses, it works, and pull it up and see who your providers are listed. See with the technology, see if there actually is any service there. And it also shows the RDOF, it shows the different programs that are being funded. And it can be challenged, and individual challenges are encouraged because they want to get it right for us.
Okay, I have two real life examples that just happened, so I'd like to bring those up if that's okay. And to just build on what Rebecca said, New Mexico is not going to get funded enough either to do the whole state. So we're going to have state investment and also find other pots of money to be able to finish out the whole thing. But we're still grateful for everything that's flowing our way. But two real life examples. The state submitted a middle mile application to NTIA in September that went from Socorro down to El Paso on the I-25 because because we're building on what Kimball's doing on the rest of the I-25. But NTIA just came back to us 2 days ago and said, hey, you overlap with a provider that won 2 BTOP awards in 2010. Okay, so I was like, oh no. So, but anyways, we got the provider, we got the maps, we did some real detailed analysis. We got everybody in a room and we talked to NTIA, and we showed that they did some little offshoots in 2010, but they did not do the I-25. So we were able to resolve it just by getting the provider, getting us, getting NTIA in the room, getting the maps, and we got it all resolved. So that was one success case. Then we had another case where 2 providers submitted an application for capital projects funds for ARPA. And both great projects, but it looked like there was an overlap. So we got the maps again, we got the 2 providers, we got in the room. One provider had about 3,000 homes in a rural community, and another one had another rural community, and they were both going to be good. But once we got down to the brass tacks, there was only 400 homes where they actually did overlap. So one provider was able to take the 400 homes out of their 3,000, and we were able to fund both of them. So it just takes a little bit of digging and a little bit of work, and sometimes you can come up with a good news answer like that at the end. Okay.
Just a little bit. I mean, with that mapping, this FCC map is like a phenomenon to me. Is it the like pure science? No, it's a map that gets updated twice a year. We as states, local governments, tribes, citizens can challenge that we're not getting the service that the providers say. Then the providers get to say, oh, we are or we aren't providing it. And then there's some dispute resolution. But the challenge for me when I look at that map is, first of all, you need to have every broadband serviceable location on your reservation have a dot on it, right? And then you want, at this point, to maximize your funding availability, you want to show that you're unconnected or underconnected, because that's gonna, one, tell you how much your state is gonna get for broadband funding that you can apply for, or as a community, that's gonna say what broadband serviceable locations in your reservation are allowable for funding. So you have to maximize your dots, and you don't give your dots away. So if a provider, if you want to set up your own ISP and a provider comes and says, hey, we want to provide service over here, you're giving up your dots. You're giving up your money and your funding eligibility. So you really need to be cognizant of this map. We know it's being used for BEAD. We know it's used by the USDA programs for like Reconnect, but we don't know where else it could go for these federal funding opportunities. So you got to really pay attention to this mapping conversation. And then second of all, I know we're focusing on BEAD. There's a GAO report out there that's talking about duplication, right? And there's a pretty prominent senator that is challenging duplication and is challenging a lot of our tribal broadband connectivity programs and trying to potentially pull back some of the funding. But in that GAO report, there's an appendix. And his big thing is there's 130 broadband programs out there. That's too many. And I don't know what the right number is, but we need more than BEAD. I don't know if we need 130, but when BEAD, there's other broadband programs. Like if you look at public safety world, homeland security world, there's other ways to add to your telecommunication infrastructure. And when you put up, like for instance, I call them sovereign towers. I think we should all have towers on our reservations. Because we can, instead of like, an example, in the community I live, we get $600 a month for the land lease for the cell tower, right? But if we built the tower, then we can lease directly with the cell providers on top. So every time a device goes by, you get a little ping, right? You get some monthly income. We can put up our own wireless infrastructure. We can put up our own public safety infrastructure and add to the robustness of that. And then if we're bringing fiber backhaul to it, then that's another income stream. So while BEAD is great for the residential service aspect, I think we need to look at that index on that GAO report to see how we can round it out. And I think that there we're going to find different solutions to add to the broader sense of how we use broadband and internet in our communities for not just commodity internet, but for community building.